I really want to know from you folks is policy issues. I'm going to try and have you out of here no later than 3:30 in an hour. Okay, so to the extent you can keep your answers concise, I would really appreciate it. We know that you all want to serve. We know that you want to give back to the community. Everybody says that. Keep it on policy, if you know what I mean. And we'll start with you, Chris. Just a quick 1 minute. What are your policy issues and what you bring to the table? For those issues and for the city.
In terms of policy issues, I think there's two things that need to happen next year. One is in February at our mid-year budget adjustment. We're going to find out that we have a little extra money from last year. And we'll have an opportunity to actually enhance one of our business incentive programs for our fiber optic loop so that we can actually go out and stop waiting for companies to get here and help them actually connect to our fiber loop. So that's one of the first initiatives I'd like to push through.
So you'd use it to provide incentives?
Yeah, we have a list of opportunity sites for our fiber optic loop. They're identified, and connecting those opportunity sites, we need to connect those opportunity sites to our fiber loop to create the capacity for more jobs for our future generations and today. But once they're connected, we'll always have that capacity.
Okay. And what's the other issue?
The other issue right now is saving St. Leandro Hospital. We have one emergency room in town. It's at risk of being closed. There is a plan in the works to save the hospital, but it could cost the city $1 million a year to do so. I support this plan. I'm endorsed by the co-founder of Save St. Leandro Hospital, Mia Ousley, and I have workable solutions to raise the revenue.
What are they? What, in a nutshell, what are they?
Well, actually, medical marijuana is presenting an opportunity for our city right now that I want to take advantage of, and it could be taken advantage of as early as April or June. In order to properly regulate marijuana, we'll have to go to the voters, create a category in our tax code. At the same time, we'll be under the hood. We can tune up our entire economic engine. I've discovered that there's not only taxing medical marijuana, but there's actually a loophole right now on airport parking facilities in San Leandro. We share land with the city of Oakland next to the Oakland airport. We both have a geographic advantage for these facilities. The difference is if you park on one side of 98th, you're paying, and that company is collecting, and the city's collecting an 18.5% parking tax. If you park on the other side of 98th, San Leandro hasn't valued their land as much as Oakland's in that area, so we're collecting an effective tax rate of less than 2%.
So you want to increase the parking tax for airport parking in San Leandro?
As all part of one measure, because as we regulate medical marijuana, we can close this tax loophole. The other place we get revenue right now is we don't have a differentiated tax code. And so large corporations like Walmart and Target and Kmart pay a substantially smaller proportion in dollars and percentage of their revenue than a small grocer like SADU Produce. And I think there's some opportunity there without hurting our strategic advantage for those companies. My research indicates...
And what would you put the money towards?
I would put the money first and foremost towards saving St. Leandro Hospital, but I'd also try and use some of the money to counter our pension requirements and our pension responsibilities if needed in the current negotiations. But there's...
How are your pension requirements?
Well, to cover some of our responsibilities depending on what happens in negotiations. Adjustment in our tax code is the only sustainable way to keep revenue coming into the city. These temporary taxes are here and then they come, and then what do we do when they're gone? But we also...
Depending on what happens in your negotiations. So are you saying this is in lieu of something I'm not sure I understand.
You just asked what I would use the money raised for. Negotiations right now are going on for our pensions. We got to do something about it. So it could be, and who knows what the settlement is. But if I was in those negotiating tables, instead of being the mayor coming without anything to the table, I would say, hey, here's an opportunity that we can raise some revenue if needed. Where can we meet you guys? Where can we meet you? Let's solve this problem.
Okay, so what would your position be at the bargaining table on pensions?
Well, right now at this table, I'm the only candidate that has a reform position. I'm endorsed by the Labor Council, and they know what my position is. I'm quoted in the San Leandro Times as saying we need to find a local solution. I was hoping San Leandro would have acted before Sacramento so that we could maintain as much trust between the bargaining powers as possible. Now that Sacramento has acted, I'm in favor of looking at not their exact dictate, but an outline, a matching, 50-50 or 60-40, depending on what our numbers say and what our needs are. But I do believe in a local solution.
50-50 or 60-40?
Or
tell me what that number looks like for police.
Well, right now, the numbers we have are for the total employees. So we have $13 million budgeted next year for our retirement benefits. Out of that $13 million, $3 million of it is the cost that they're supposed to be paying into their pension, or that we agreed to pay years ago in lieu of a raise. So that's about 7 to 9% that they would normally pay. So a 50-50 would be I was thinking either we pay 4, they pay 5, or the
4 or 5.
If the employees get to choose whether they want to contribute 7 or 9%.
Got it. So what you are saying is that the employee contribution would be split 50-50.
Yes, because that's what our the mayor's big concern was in the State of the City address.
And are you saying that would be close to what the state plan would be in there? Is that the idea?
Well, as I understand the state plan, it seemed more like a pay cut, and but it got him closer. But I just read the other day. Now there's these loopholes.
Well, there's discussion of 50-50 in
2018 mandates and.
Right.
This
what
and
does that 50-50 represent to you?
Well, right now it would only represent $1.5 million and $1.5 million from us and from them each year, but they would also taper our obligations for the long-term future.
Justin.
Yep.
So why are you into this?
So basically, I've lived in San Leandro my entire life. I lived in District 4 my entire life, pretty much. I live in the house that I grew up in District 4, which was my dad's house, and then my dad went and moved out to Pleasanton.
Yeah, but what policy do you bring to the table?
Public safety.
Okay.
So I want to address public safety.
What do you want to do?
So I think we need to increase community policing, and we need to increase our officer headcount, because right now we're running severely understaffed per capita compared to neighboring cities.
Okay, and how would you fund that?
So I would look into the budget, and I've already been looking in there, and there's places that we're spending excess where I feel like we can renegotiate or cut back.
Name them.
So for instance, our contract with the fire, we actually pay $5 million more. We have a population equivalent to that of Livermore, but they pay $13 million per year in fire. We pay $18.6 million.
Why is that?
I believe we probably negotiated a poor contract.
Okay, I'm listening.
So that's one place. So as I dig into the budget, I'm starting to see places where we're spending a little bit more money than we should.
And it sounds like you have some budget background?
No,
Okay.
I'm complete political outsider. I'm
Okay.
reading the budget.
Yeah,
So
but what do you do professionally?
I'm a manager for Target.
Okay. I'm sorry, go on. So
Yeah, so I mean, I do have experience with financials.
so you were saying you were digging into the budget and?
Yeah, so and then I seen within the general government portion of it, we're actually spending a little bit more than some of our neighboring cities, especially per capita for our population. I feel like we can cut back in that. I would have to dig in more, obviously, before I figured out where that would come from.
Okay.
But unlike Chris, I'm kind of opposed to raising the airport parking tax, and
Because?
well, because I think it just gives it makes our San Leandro Airport parking facility, it gives them an uncompetitive advantage with the neighboring Oakland city. So basically, people drive to San Leandro to park here. They have to drive a little bit out of their way, but they do that for a better rate. So with regard to medical marijuana, I do support that, and I would be interested in entertaining a dispensary into the city. I feel that would generate revenue as well, as long as it was well regulated and zoned accordingly.
Darlene,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon.
I'd like to that preserve essential services like the police and libraries, parks, and senior services. And I like to drive more policies towards being for green businesses to enter San Leandro, and technology, and attract vibrant businesses to San Leandro. We have opportunities coming to San Leandro, as you know, the new Kaiser Permanente, and the shoreline development, also the high fiber optic loop. These are opportunities where startup businesses can enter and also expand existing businesses.
Okay. So what would you do that's not already being done?
What I would do is enhance what's already being done. By that I mean I would work strongly with the San Leandro Chamber of Commerce and work on their strategy, San Leandro by Design, where they strategically focus on the type of businesses we want for our community.
Benny?
Yeah, well, let's focus on the top two. Number one, public safety, and number two, economic development, so we can bring in quality jobs to San Leandro. How we would accomplish that is a couple of things. Number one, community reinvestment, and also bringing in small business financing, as well as commercial financing. Right now, a lot of folks are going out of town to get that kind of financing, so that really causes the shift in the market to go out of San Leandro. What we want to do is we want to bring that spending back into San Leandro. I worked in financial institutions for over 20 years now. I work for a statewide nonprofit, but my background...
What nonprofit is that?
It's actually Espernet, but I work for the subsidiary company working for Espernet.
I have no idea what that is.
Espernet is a company that deals with foster care. The company I work for is Altruit.
And what do they do?
They focus on providing cloud services, high technology to nonprofit institutions. My background for Altruit is a financial systems consultant, working with technology systems as well as the financial systems.
So, public safety, you said. What would you do on public safety?
Well, I think some of the other candidates already spoke to the fact that we're not fully staffed. We have lower per capita, but we actually have very good officers who actually maintain the crime rate very low. I think there's a couple of ways to control that model. Number one, a greater usage of the homeowners association, expanding the homeowners associations. When you go to my homeowners association, we actually have the lowest crime rate. The dynamics obviously work for us because there's one way in, but we also do a lot of community policing. So our crime rate, respective to the city, is actually the lowest. We have about 3% of the population, but we only have about 0.5% of the crime rate. And that's because of the initiatives that we did as a board. And I've been heading up the board for nearly a decade.
So, let's come back to one of the original issues that Chris raised. Let's talk about pensions for a second. Can you each give me, starting with you, Benny, an overview of how you see the pension situation, the city's pension situation?
Well, I support the collective bargaining process, which is basically allowing the experts in that process to still continue to do the negotiations. I think where the city may have some challenges is the funding model. Because of my experience in data management as well as financial systems, that's what I would be focusing on. Taking a look at how the funding model is working and find ways to change that funding model so that way we can actually... The funding model? The model that they use to fund it. That's why we're in a deficit right now.
A deficit at what level? What do you mean a deficit?
Well, the deficit that was actually addressed with Measure Z because of the fact that we gained another $4 million because of Measure Z, which I signed 2 years ago when we voted for it. My name was on that. And that actually has put us actually back into the black because of Measure Z. It passed overwhelmingly.
And what does the future look like?
Well, the future is that we have to plan ahead now because of the fact that Measure Z will run out in a few years.
2017, if I'm correct.
That's correct. 2016 is really what we have to be concerned about. So we have to, number one, focus on economic development, focus on community reinvestment, get folks to focus on the financing, small business financing, so that way we can have a greater economic development, more small business development with shopping.
Okay, well, we got sort of
Sure.
off track here, though. You said that you would allow the experts to do the negotiating, but you would look at the funding model for pensions, which
Correct.
was my original question.
Correct.
So my question then is, what is that funding model?
I don't know that.
And then you
Yeah.
and then you talked about the deficit, and I was asking what deficit.
Well, historically we were drawing against our reserves, and originally our reserve was over $20 million, and it went down to as much as I think just $1.5 million. So clearly we were spending against.
My
the
understanding
reserves.
is your reserves are about 14 right now. Is that right?
Yes, because it's funded back.
17%.
What?
What?
17% of our 17 or 18% of our general.
That's the
fund.
goal, but you haven't actually quite hit.
20 is our goal. We're at.
That's right.
We're
I'm
at
sorry.
17 or 18.
Okay, so like I said, Measure Z actually helped basically put us back into black.
Okay. So what does the long range budget forecast look like?
Right now, it's not so bad because the economy is beginning to pick up, but then there's more economic development that we need to do to basically increase our budget.
What happens in 2018?
In 2018, we basically lose the funds from
And
Measure
what,
Z.
so what's the solution there?
The solution is through the community reinvestment to bring in the funds back into the city through economic development.
So you want to offset Measure Z in 2018
Correct.
with economic development.
Bring in quality jobs, also doing community compliance to raise the property value. So when Kaiser Hospital is obviously going to be finished very soon, it's going to bring in 2,500 jobs, 500 net new jobs. With the net new jobs, you want to keep the spending within the city. We have a lot of good retail in there, but we need to have more. Some of the candidates have spoken about bringing in the concierge type retail, bringing in the ones that folks would actually come into San Leandro, make it a destination spot.
Okay, but let me bring you back,
Sure.
because I want to bring you back to this pension issue.
Sure.
Because you said you'd look at the funding model.
Correct.
And I guess, and did I hear you right when I asked you what the funding model currently is? You don't know what it is?
No, I don't know what it is.
Okay. Darlene, can you address the pension issue and how you see it?
It's a hot topic today.
Well, I know it's a hot topic.
And it's a very hot topic, and many people are concerned that the city can't afford this type of funding, so therefore it's pension reform. And as a former probation officer who has worked with pensions and earned a pension, who put my life at stake for community safety, you know, I have a personal stake in understanding and working with law enforcement and the pensions. As you know, the San Jose chief just resigned, and of course he doesn't say it's because of pension reform, but it's because he's standing by his officers who have to deal with lack of benefits due to the pension reform. Community safety is always important, and especially...
Okay, wait a minute. I get all that, but let me ask you, do you understand the structure of how the pension system works?
Absolutely, I understand.
Explain it to me.
The structure is, today in San Leandro, the city pays total contribution to PERS.
Yes.
That's how it works.
Okay.
And
what does that cost the city?
I don't know how much it costs the city. I know I've looked at the budget, and it's a huge chunk out of the budget. I believe it's close to 17%. I'm not sure, but I have seen.
Is that sustainable?
Okay, it's not, according to what's going on now in the economy and looking towards the future, it is not sustainable, but it has been sustainable in the past, but it appears not to be sustainable.
What's the solution?
The solution in San Francisco is...
And what's the solution in San Leandro?
One of the solutions in San Leandro is economic development to offset those costs. A second solution is contribution based on salary, different rates depending on total salary.
How would that?
Sorry.
What would that look like?
Yeah, what would that look like? Let's see, is there anything here that we can wipe this up with before it goes dripping on the
It doesn't look like it's dripping.
Yeah, but I don't want to make it a huge mark.
What that looks like is employees contributing 1% up to $50,000, 2% up to $70,000 annual salary, and
so you would do a progressive scale.
Yes, progressive scale contributions based on
and how much
total
do you think
salary.
that needs to be? What should those levels be?
I have to do the math on that right now.
Give me a ballpark. What kind of numbers are you talking about?
I think the current pension base is roughly about between 15 and 16 million.
What do these numbers look like?
Up to 7.5% contribution.
At what level?
At what level?
Yeah, salary.
Depending on the salaries.
Yeah,
highest salary would pay the highest.
Yeah, what would that?
pension.
What
100,000. 100,000.
Okay.
Boy, you know how to pin a person down.
He's a reporter.
I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. I've been writing. You've been reading our paper. You know, I've been writing about this for 4 years now, nonstop. It seems like. So I'm sure you guys see me read the paper. I assume you've read my column. I assume we're concerned about this issue. If you did that, what would happen? Where do you see this current pension system?
Of course, it seems sustainable if you implement a system like that. It will ease some of the crisis budget. It will ease some of the tension from the city government if you do that. And I also want to have policies in place where we implement deferred compensation, where the city employees can contribute pre-tax and have retirement assets on their own simultaneously.
Okay, but that doesn't solve your pension problem, right?
No, but it educates the city employees, and it empowers them, and it gives them some assets that aren't tied. You agree with that?
Well, it gives them some other assets. I'm
Yes.
not sure how it educates them about the pension problem, but it gives them other assets. Yes, that's true. Justin?
With regard to the pension, with officers that are currently or city employees that are currently employed, not for reforming that.
Pardon?
I would not be for reforming any current officers. Going forward,
Should they continue at their current contribution levels?
officers that are currently employed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you would not change the current contribution levels for current employees?
No.
Okay.
To me, it's something that's been pre-negotiated. They've gone without raises. And let's keep in mind that I'm not a pension expert. I'm not a financial analyst or anything like that. But they have gone without raises for several years. As part of that, they did that in a way to keep their pension. With regard to officers that are coming aboard, say after the first of the year, I would be open to hearing some small, subtle changes. But I do respect the fact of what they do and what their job entails. and I feel pretty strongly about that. But I do understand that there would have to be some sort of compromise for the pension to the program to sustain. We don't want to bankrupt the city, but anything that is done needs to be done in moderation.
Chris?
First,
Since you open this topic.
yeah, let me just apologize. All my opponents here are quoted in the San Leandro Times as not supporting reform. So to hear Darlene even talk about changes that are major
Just tell me where you're at.
is amazing to me. But I'm endorsed by the Labor Council. I told the Labor Council that reform is necessary. The unions.
Could you
understand that
tell
reform
me
is necessary.
what the reform looks like?
I'm right now, because Sacramento has acted, I'd like to see a 50-50 split if possible in San Leandro.
Okay. Let's come back to that then for a second, because you said that the first time.
Yes.
And you said 50-50 split, and I asked you what that 50-50 split was.
I'm talking about out of our total retirement benefits we pay each year, it's about $13 million. That's medical benefits. That's not on top of the salary. The salary portion is between 7 and 9% of each employee's salary based on their level and what they want.
Salary portion, you mean
the compensation portion outside of the medical benefits and everything else where we can't adjust right now. That's on a sliding scale up forever, it seems. But we can taper off our contributions to the pensions based on the salary and their contributions. So they, in retirement they're drawing a salary and then they're getting medical benefits and so we pay $13 million a year to do that. There's about $3 to $4 million that's adjustable right now, which is which is on the table right now and being discussed. Which is, do the employees contribute to their part, or does the city continue to pay their contributions? The model was a bad idea a long time ago. It was a great idea. It just, the numbers didn't work out then, and the numbers aren't going to work out now. And I honestly think even if we put something new in place, a 50-50 position, this will be an ongoing discussion for the next.
Okay, but I keep asking you, what the 50% of what?
So there's this $3 million a year
Yeah.
that the city pays as part of the employee's contribution, the 7 to 9% per employee, into their CalPERS.
Mm-hmm.
That's the negotiating room, the $3 million. That's what's kind of.
You realize most
sticky.
other cities, or many other cities, that's just the employee share.
Right. We're paying the full employee share. Yes.
Yeah. And so your point is to split the employee share.
No, bring it down to a 50-50 total split.
50-50 total split of the employee share.
Well, our share plus their share. Yes. Well, so that we both are paying the same amount.
Okay. So there's $13 million going in.
Yes.
So are you saying the employee should pay 6.5 and the city should pay 6.5?
Out of the 13 million, not all of that is for salary. Some of that is for the medical benefits.
None of that is for pensions?
Huh?
For pensions?
Is
Is it
that
for salaries?
No, if I'm talking about the retirement package altogether. That's how much supposedly we're paying each year into our retirement packages, 13 million. And I think there is a model that even at 6.5 and 6.5, I mean, it has to be negotiated with the employees. What San Jose has proven is that whatever numbers you and I are talking about aren't necessarily the best numbers. And what I know is I have a sustainable revenue measure to offer.
Okay, let me give you some numbers from police. The current payroll of police before overtime is $9.4 million as of fiscal year 11-12. The current city cost for pensions for 11-12 was 56 cents on the dollar. The city paid all of it.
Right. The governor's plan is to get it down to the 14-cent mark, and that
The governor's plan is to get what down to the 14-cent mark?
that 56 cents on the dollar to about 14 cents on the dollar for the government's contribution to the employee pension program.
No. It is not. But my question to you is, how would you guys split these costs?
Did you clearly understand how we split it?
How you split it now?
No, how I would, if I had to, how I would split the costs on a progressive.
Yes, and you talked about, as I heard, 1 to 2%. So you take that 56 cents and you would trim it down somewhere at most. For those with 100,000 or more, you'd bring it down to 49, if I hear that, then, for the employership.
Of the 56 cents, it would be progressive, meaning that starting on the lower...
I totally understand what progressive scale is.
Okay.
I get that. Your top end was 7,
Right.
which wouldn't apply to most of these people, because you said $100,000. So...
The majority of the police officers' salaries are about...
But even
7.
let's say it was all 7.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Your top end is less than the standard employee share under CalPERS, which is 9 for police. Which, as you can see, even if you went to 9, doesn't really cover it. Doesn't really
cover the 56.
It just is a dent it's a dent in the 56, not a serious reduction. And by the way, let me give you another little detail. The system is underfunded right now to the tune, this is just your police. What?
Our unfunded liabilities?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's the big elephant in the room that nobody ever talks about anymore.
How much is it?
We have like $70 million, and when we merge with the fire department and all these other things that we've done in moving money that we haven't even addressed. The mayor hasn't even figured out a way to address it.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, you've got this huge problem. You've got these costs. You've got a projection of a budget deficit. You're going to fall off a cliff again in 2017. And some of you want to hire more people.
Well,
is there anyone in this room who has a realistic financial plan that addresses this issue?
Yeah, and that's where the collective bargaining process is working, because of the fact that the Police Officers Association is not opposed to reform. One of the things that they're looking at, right, and again, I don't know all the different details, I don't think they're opposed to a second tier.
A second tier doesn't begin to make a dent for years and years and years.
I support the governor's plan, and I know there's some loopholes still that need to be closed on it because
the governor's plan doesn't get you as a local government anywhere until maybe 2017 or 18, and only then if you're willing to bargain tough.
That's right, and that's why arguing pensions isn't the only way we're going to dig out of our fiscal mess. I'm offering a sustainable revenue measure, not some temporary Measure Z sales tax that does burn working families. An actual tax code that says Walmart needs to pay its fair share, that our land near the airport is as valuable as Oakland's, and that medical marijuana is now a right and we need to tax it. That revenue in my research says that's $2 to $4 million if we tune up our tax code properly. That's sustainable. That's beyond 2017. That's something that I can bring to the table, that I am bringing to the table. And then we have to discuss whether we even extend Measure Z. That might have to be a possibility as well. But to talk about where we want our employees to be without how are we going to... I don't think it's going to be solved until we actually get to the cliff, because we need to know exactly where it's going to fall off. That's why I think along the way, we need to make sure that we're showing our employees, look, we care about you. Here's some things we can do to get some revenue. Our city manager right now...
Let me ask you, is there anyone in the room who today would support police paying 9% of payroll towards their pensions and miscellaneous paying 8%?
I thought that's what they're currently doing. They're doing
not
9 and
paying
41.
Anything.
Pardon?
They're doing 9% and 41.
They're not paying
They're
anything.
not paying a thing.
They're not paying a damn thing.
Currently, they're not paying anything.
They're not paying anything.
The city pays their whole portion.
I would support that measure if my revenue measure could be passed and we could offer a plan to give our employees reasonable raises within a 3 to 10 year period and what that looks like for them, because they do have rights and they are workers and we need to give them incentive in order to adjust. They're holding the biggest bargaining chip. They're holding our city services. I mean, without them, they know that going into these things. So you asked me a direct question. I would support that plan as long as it came with a plan that had a revenue measure to go out, and so we could show these employees.
What if you can't get that revenue measure passed?
Well, the medical marijuana isn't a pass-fail thing. It's we need to go to the voter. We have to adjust our tax code. It's illegal for us to ban medical marijuana. We need you just to approve
Yeah, but you
this
still
language.
have to go to voters.
We do, and it would be weird if we didn't pass basically a definitions change of our tax
Well, you
code.
still have to, you'd have to go to the voters
Right.
and basically ask for approval for medical marijuana tax.
Well, along with all the other things I
Right.
talked about, all on one ballot.
So you wouldn't do anything until you got, which you're not going to be able to go back to the voters for at least a year or two, right?
April or June. We're regulating medical marijuana right now. In order to do that, in order to properly do that, we'll have to go to the ballot. So it could be as early as April, June. It could be as late as next November or the following November.
Anyone in this room want to give me any confidence that?
Again, I'm the only one who's even
you are
expressed
the only one
that there is reform.
You are the only one in this room who's even putting forward something. You don't want to raise anything. You want to do a small progressive thing that doesn't come close. You don't really seem to understand the numbers, and yours are tied to some other tax increase before you want to move.
Well, no,
I mean, I'm sorry. Help me understand this. We're sitting here and we think this is the number one biggest issue. You've got in excess of $70 million of unfunded liabilities in this city for retiree benefits alone. That's 2.5 times the entire city payroll for a year. Okay, you're headed off a financial cliff. You already have a budget projection that shows you guys have shortfalls to close. We, as an editorial page, as you probably know, if you read us, we're sort of moderate, reasonable fiscal sustainability in the midst of trying to be reasonable and fair to all sides. I don't hear anything in this room. The other panel of candidates seem to sort of get this, but the other San Leandro candidates. But I'm not hearing anything in this room from any of the four of you. That gives me any sense that you grasp the significance of this.
Absolutely, I grasp it. And that's why I don't go out in the newspaper and say no reform, because that is just an irresponsible and unrealistic position to hold these days. Now, what is the solution?
I mean, I don't understand why if you wanted to grasp this, why making your employees pay what other agencies are traditionally doing has to be tied. You won't do that before a tax increase.
No, I didn't say I wouldn't do it before a tax increase. I think it should be done this year as part of the negotiation. It's just that it should be done in the same conversation as we are talking about, so that we can give them raises in the future. But it should be done, and it shouldn't be part of the deal, just another thing we're doing as part of the city to rectify our problems. They don't have to be, exclusive. I mean, they don't have to be mutual. It could be exclusive, but it's something that I would want to do at the same time in order to push forward. Because if we have to make the cuts...
By the way, the governor's 50-50 split is not a 50-50 split of the employee share. It's the 50-50 split of a much larger section of it. I'm sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, and if we do have to make the cuts, it's going to come from our core city services, and if that's something that we have to do because neither our police nor our city can come to negotiation, well, then that's the big reform. I mean, change is going to happen either way.
So you cut core city services?
No, that's not what I said. I'm saying if we don't change, and if we don't require our employees to pay into their pensions, pay their share into their pensions, then cuts are coming, which is a form of reform. So to say no reform, like my opponents say, is just they have a more unrealistic grasp on what the reality is. Now, what it looks like, what the numbers look like, 13 million, 6.5, yeah, absolutely, that would be the best way to do it, if we could do it that way. Do I expect the police to just back off their position? I mean, they're on a cliff too, looking down saying, do I give up 9% of my pay? Well, what bargaining power in their right mind would do that? So I respect their position, and that's why I want to show them that at the same time I'm negotiating with you, unions, I'm also working to really get ourselves out of this, connecting our businesses to the fiber optic. They talk about economic growth. I'm the only one with an idea on how to do it and where to get the money. Going after revenue measure as separate measures so that the police and the city employee unions can see that we're not just being hung out to dry like we were years ago when instead of taking raises, we let you pay into our pensions. We did it to ourselves. And honestly, the unions have just had great negotiators for the last, 50 plus years, and I don't understand that.
Anyone else want to add in?
I'd like to say it took a while for us to get in this problem. That's why I'm saying progressively get us out, and not to just automatically take a 9% pension reform stance. So, as
a lot of other cities have done just that.
yes,
The city we
I
live in,
know,
we're in
I
right now
know,
does
but
that.
there's a cause and effect to everything. I know many of the citizens in San Leandro are extremely concerned about the safety, especially the seniors. They want a full police force. It's a vulnerable population. So we have to take their voice and hear it, and not just do things to fix the budget in 1 year.
Isn't the argument you're making just exactly the argument for why you should ask for a full employee contribution so you have more money freed up so you don't have to cut more cops?
That's why Oakland and every other city in Alameda does that, and they've been able to maintain it.
Well, yeah, but Oakland also has a increased crime rate, as does San Jose.
Do you want to go ask an Oakland police officer if the increased crime rate has to do with their pension costs?
Do you understand employee morale and the things that it would do, retaining talent?
So you're saying
So-
that
so
Oakland
any
police-
officers-
Oakland police officers are bad police officers because they have to pay into their
I'm
pensions?
saying
No,
that
no,
it is
don't put words in my
competitive.
mouth.
I'm
It's
asking you a question.
competitive,
You're putting words in my mouth.
and cities, police officers are smart enough to relocate to different cities where there are different pay and different benefits. So we have to be competitive and keep our force.
Everybody's
All at the
doing
same-
it now. Competitiveness is out the window. Reform is
Whoa.
happening throughout the country, throughout the state. They talk about equal pay for equal jobs in different jurisdictions, but what reform is going to do is, as long as every jurisdiction goes with the local solution or goes with the mandate, is it's going to create the same effect that they have now. It's going to be equal pay for equal jobs. The competitive level will stay the same because everybody has to change. So talking about whether we're competitive or not isn't a valid argument as far as I'm concerned, because our competitiveness comes from the community we live in. It comes from a lot of other things other than just what we're going to pay them. And if you talk to our police officers, a lot of them grew up in town. Their passion to protect our town comes from more than just how much money
I
they
talk
get
to a
paid.
lot of our police officers. I'm friends with a lot of our police officers. I understand a lot. But what I'm saying is that if you're a good police officer and you're compensated a certain amount, and your city that you're in tries to go a one shot 9%.
It's not one shot, guys. You guys haven't been paying attention the last few years. Remember, the unions have actually been leading the way in reform. Our unions have taken furlough days. They have already taken, pay cuts or stop and pay raises for many years. They are leading the charge reform. So to say that we're doing it in 1 year, no, that's not what's happening. What's happening right now in 2012 is we are to the point, after we've negotiated with our unions for so long, after Sacramento was forced to act on a bipartisan bill that passed with only 2 nay votes, that everybody has to wake up. The model is unsustainable. It is in no way, I consider, an emergency. It is an absolute reality. And I want to raise a family in this area, and I want to raise a family in San Leandro. And each year we don't address this problem, more library hours will be cut. We will not be able to hire more police officers, more staff at our city hall.
How many library hours have been cut?
I don't know, Justin. How long have you been involved? You should be able to tell me the answer.
I've been involved in going to the library, and it doesn't look like it's cut back.
The fact is,
It's open till-
without
it's open-
major
it's open till-
reform,
it's open till 9
without
o'clock
major
still.
reform, we lose our good police officers, because not only will they move out of our city, they will move out of our state to other jurisdictions. So,
How's it working for San Jose?
How is it working for San Jose?
How's it working for How's their crime rate looking?
You know what, Justin? I don't tie crime statistics to pension reform. I think that's a narrow-minded view of the world.
No, it's a very global view because it goes to the overall morale and retaining talent.
It has
But
absolutely.
none of it goes to the fact that you're going to go off the
which I
if you don't.
which I totally agree that I did not completely understand.
And how's it
And
working for us, Justin? How has it been working for us at San Leandro? How's our crime rate going?
Our crime rate's going pretty bad.
Oh man, and we're paying into our pension. So how is that working?
So
Right. So the point is, we can retain our talent because we have good people in place. But if we can't add more talent, like all you guys want to do, and hire more police officers, then we'll never, ever get to the goals that you guys are talking about. And it starts right here.
Well,
Dan is absolutely
maybe we should just
right.
maybe we should just raise a bunch of taxes then, like you suggest.
I have put forward a tax revenue measure that does not burden working families or seniors. That parking tax is a user tax that is passed through to the consumer, most of them outside of San Leandro, parking in those lots. That Walmart tax is a business model that they are operating in a lot of communities around the country.
Tell you what, guys, let's let Benny weigh in. He's been sort of sitting there quietly.
You know, like I said, the police are already working together with the city, and they're part of that negotiating process, right? They're looking at their existing benefits, and they're also looking at the second tier of benefits. Now, does that really help them with the financial cliff? Probably not, right? There's other measures, not just only the police. There's other departments that also have to look at that second tier just as well. That's what's going to help slow that down. The other aspect is, what are you using to fund additional revenue into the city? And that's, I think all of us are on the same boat, trying to generate more economic development to bring in those revenues. So really, that's going to be the key.
So you think more...
Bringing in more revenue is what he said.
Yes.
And I'm the only candidate with an idea on how to do that.
So, well, you're the only candidate with the idea on how to do that, but do you really think we're going to bring in businesses with the crime rate going where it's going?
Yes. A parking tax is an inelastic good or service. The demand will be there. The demand will only increase in the future. It will not burden that business's ability to profit or succeed. The differentiated Walmart tax is a tax that exists in a lot of other communities in the Bay Area. They have business models that work for it. But we have valued ourselves in that land for Walmart at a low level. How's that worked for us? It hasn't. How is the crime rate at Target, Justin? It's not working. So we look at what is working in other cities, how other cities have raised money, ideas, and opportunities within our tax code. Oakland, you know why you would like the parking tax? Do you know why Oakland has an 18.5% parking tax? To keep their police fully funded. It is a necessity.
Okay. Let's come over there.
Thank you.
Darlene, you want to weigh in?
Well, I already talked about attracting new businesses. We have things already in the place, and we haven't even taken the sales revenue and the opportunities that brings into the equation to afford pensions for our city employees and police and fire. The investment, the economy, and the investments in the pension plan itself, PERS, is responsible for some of the underfunded positions that we are in right now. Don't forget that. So this is in response to the economic crisis that we've had in the past. So just like we had that crisis, we can try to have more businesses come in and attract more sales revenue that way, and we have plenty of opportunities. Why I'm running for city council is to make sure that those projects are not slowed down, that they are implemented on time, within budget, and hold systems accountable to make sure that that happens.
Any other issues that I should consider in here that we haven't covered?
About pensions or in general?
In general.
Well, I think the hospital is not getting enough attention here. It's something that has been sad to watch in the courts. Sutter is definitely holding all the cards. It's a dichotomy of where the capitalist world meets the nonprofit world, meets the responsibilities of jurisdictions to maintain access to health care. It's an issue that may go all the way to the Supreme Court in terms of what hospitals are required to pay after including their nonprofit staff in some kind of community benefit agreement. There is a plan right now. I've spoken with Supervisor Chan. I'm endorsed by Supervisor Chan, where there could be a trilateral relationship with the Alameda Medical Center, Sutter, and the city of San Leandro.
But you guys need $1 million.
We would need maybe $1 million, right?
That's my understanding.
Chris Zapata has found this small little thing in our 911 tax code where we haven't been collecting. We're about 4 or 5% off. It looks like a small number on the budget, but it's something he dialed in on. He thinks there's $1 million in uncollected or these prepaid phone cards and how they don't collect the 911 tax until the card's actually used. So if the card's never used, you never got the tax on the charge of the phone. He's trying to work through this so that we can get that. So I know that's what Supervisor Chan has talked about. If Zapata finds $1 million in our budget from somewhere else, it's an idea that I would support. Maintaining access to health care, even if we do have a new hospital, is an absolute right, and it is a priority to keep the quality of life good in San Leandro and to help it go to great so that we have access to 2 hospitals for our senior populations on both sides of the city. And it's because of what's happened in the courts, it's getting less and less attention.
Any other issues we should take in mind?
Well, San Leandro Hospital, I'm for keeping the emergency room and intensive care units open there. We've just spent redevelopment funds on a green, high-tech, efficient senior community center, and I think that's a fantastic design to have a wellness type center right next to a functioning hospital.
But in terms of other issues, San Leandro has done really well in the last few years to re-engage and support its senior community. We did build a senior community center. The participation in that is skyrocketing each year. So we've done good there, but where we have failed and where things are going wrong right now is our engagement with our younger generation, our future generation. Much like the governor had to get rid of his internship positions as part of the negotiation with the unions, San Leandro had to cut its internship positions in City Hall. So
I hear that, and I'm trying to stay a little macro.
Okay.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't want to get.
You don't want me to get into the details with that?
Sure.
A couple things. The dynamics of San Leandro have changed significantly. You take a look at in the 2000 census, I think the API population was like 18.9%. And you take a look in 2010, the API population is 29.3% or 29.7%. It's grown more than 50%, but we're not taking advantage of that. If you go to City Hall and you take a look at some of the applications, they don't really require bilingual or any of those. Any of the applications to be in multiple language. The group that I founded, which was the Asian Community Cultural Association, provided translation services to the city so that they would have emergency cards. Now, I've gone out to the community. I've knocked on a lot of doors for this campaign. I've spoken to a lot of APIs, and one of the things that they've told me in the other languages was basically the fact that there's not a lot of opportunities for APIs to really open up and start up businesses there. Most of them actually come to Oakland, Chinatown to do all their financing. We should be able to do that locally in San Leandro, but we cannot. So we actually have to go round trip. So there's no incentive for them really.
Why do you think that's not happening? Because usually the market takes care of such things.
Yeah, how would you bring those banks in?
Well, you can actually. That's one of the things that we tried to do about 2007. But in 2007, the focus was on the lessening of the economy. I actually brought in ethnic-oriented banks.
But I guess my question is,
correct.
Yes.
I hear what you're saying, but that is the sort of thing that markets do tend to take care of.
Why do you
think they're not?
Well, you can, because the questions are still coming up nowadays. There are some markets that have been, some business that had stayed unopened for 6 months because of the fact that they're not very familiar with how to get through the channels in City Hall.
I see. So you think
there are still challenges out there.
You think there are bureaucratic barriers here?
I don't think it's the bureaucratic barriers. I think definitely there's language barriers. Right, with a city that's grown, more than 50% towards that one slot, and plus another thing is you take a look at the business registrations over the last 12 years. More than 60% of it has been API, so there is an interest to basically empower themselves to become more self-sufficient. We can generate a lot of revenues. When you go down to Oakland, Chinatown, you just draw a 1 mile circle. There's a lot of revenue being generated there, but also you take a look. There's a lot of access to, I guess, banking for them, right? I think banking in that case, there's probably more access to resources than all of San Leandro in just that 1 mile circle. So if you,
it's got a long history too.
Yes, there's a lot of history. But again, if you create that access, they don't have to drive around an hour round trip to get access to it. All they have to do is drive like 10 minutes to be able to access that, and that's where the economic engine builds. I mean, there's always an interest in a lot of communities. If you take a look, 20 years ago, there was less of an Asian influence down the peninsula, but then you go into San Leandro, there's highly less of an Asian influence.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't just worry about 33% of San Leandros. We got to worry about all San Leandrons. And so focusing on one ethnicity isn't necessarily going to help us, or in the long run, especially if we alienate the other.
It's not going to hurt us.
The other people. Yeah, and if Romney wins, focusing on 50% of the American people, he thinks it's not going to hurt us either. We have a diverse community. We need to focus on everyone. But there is another drain on our budget that isn't getting a lot of attention right now, and that is our attorney fees. We have 2 lawsuits right now in the courts that have costing us more than
I don't want to go
$4 million.
that deep.
But we need to look at possibly moving from a contract system back to an elected or an appointed city attorney.
I got to tell you that, Chris, I've been around this so many times with different cities, seeing them go from contract
What is your
to
experience?
staff to contract, and it's never as clean. And frankly, in the midst of all your problems right now, that's not where I'm going to focus.
Well, I'd say
Because I've seen cities go back and forth. I've seen one city get rid of their contract and go to staff. I've seen them put ballot measures to get rid of their staff and go make a contract.
Have you ever seen the lawyer who started the firm sign the document as the city attorney, transferring all city attorney fees to his newly created firm?
I will take a look at documents if you want at a different time.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to hold up on that right now.
No, that was just throwing another issue.
No, I hear what you're saying. Folks, this has been interesting. And, I very much appreciate you coming in. In looking at the numbers, we think the city has a problem, a big financial problem. And frankly, we think the magnitude of the problem is huge. And so, that's going to guide our thinking on this, and where we go exactly, I don't know. But I really appreciate you guys coming up. I really appreciate you spending the time. And whichever one of you ends up in the city council, we hope that you'll understand this is a really real problem. It's a big, big, big problem. Looking at you guys' numbers, your unfunded liabilities for your pension and retirement funds. And you're not the only one. You're not the only city.
No.
But you're one of the few cities with that big an unfunded liability, and your cops paying nothing, and your